Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another Bracketology update here for college football. We're looking at the 12-team playoff, one more week of regular season action, and then we do have the conference championships. We've got probably 6 or 7 teams that have basically clinched at this point outside of some crazy upset happening. And then we do have a few spots left up. It does seem like the Big Ten will definitely get 4 teams in unless a crazy upset happens with Penn State somehow losing to Maryland or Indiana somehow losing to Purdue. If those two things do not happen, which we don't think they will, the Big Ten should get 4 teams in. The SEC right now is looking around for possibly 5 teams. I know there's some 3-loss teams that some people think should get in, like an Alabama, like potentially a South Carolina, although it's going to be tough. And then you do have the ACC really gunning for 2 teams to make the playoff. We will see. You've got SMU with only 1 loss right now. You also have Miami. If both of those teams win this next week, will both of them be in no matter what happens in the ACC championship? And then you also do have the independent Notre Dame along with the Mountain West contender, Boise State, probably going to be the group of 5 bid, maybe Tulane if Boise State does end up losing. But this is just an update to summarize everything. This is I guess this is CBS's playoff bracket right now. So the way that they do these rankings, we can argue about if the structure of this is correct or proper. I don't think it is. I think they need to change this next year ASAP. Because basically what you're saying when it comes to the auto bids is you're saying every conference is equal. It's not even close to the case. We know the Big Ten and the SEC are better. So, putting Ohio State down as a number 5 seed, this would be honestly probably really good for Ohio State. It actually would be. See, this is why it's dumb. Like the idea of Ohio State losing to Oregon in the Big Ten championship, but then being the 5 seed, you face Arizona State at home, then you face Boise State on a neutral site. Rather than you get a bye in round 1, so you don't have to face Arizona State, but then you face either Tennessee or Georgia. And I don't think, because you can see, like, look at this, all Big Ten, all SEC. I don't think they would actually do something like this. I'm guessing they would split them up. The only reason this is like this is because it's before the matchups are actually set. My guess is they would bump one of these teams, like they would move Penn State down a spot, Notre Dame up a spot, something like that to change the matchups rather than it being all Big Ten versus an all, SEC. You can see with those matchups right there, they would change those. But in terms of this, you do have Oregon as the number 1 overall seed, so Ohio State goes down to 5. You've got Texas as the 2 seed, so that would be Georgia going down to number 8 because Georgia would have 3 losses at that point. But I think Georgia might only fall down to, well, even this would be them at number 7, but they fall down to number 8 because of the auto bid of Boise State. You do have Miami being the ACC champion, also SMU making it. That's really what the ACC wants right now is 2 teams in. It would be Miami and SMU. So both Miami and SMU win this coming week. All bets are off if Miami loses to Syracuse, though, because I think there's a slight possibility that might happen. But let's just say both of them win, then they're probably both getting in because they're not going to penalize the loser. And if they penalize the loser, then you look at a team like Notre Dame who doesn't have a conference championship. And you let them in. There's some problems there. Now, a lot of people are getting angry about Notre Dame being ranked as high as they are when you look at where they're at in terms of the committee, the fact that they lost to Northern Illinois. I mean, I do have problems with Notre Dame, honestly. I understand because their analytics are so good. Their game control has got to be amazing. Their FPI is amazing. The problem, though, is the loss to Northern Illinois and also really no great wins. It is an issue. And also, you're not in a conference. That's a problem. And it's like, should they really host a playoff game? That's what it comes down to because they can't get a bye. They can't be one of the top 4 seeds. They're not going to be the 5 seed. You don't reward them with that. Especially if they went 12-0, they could be the 5 seed. That's fine. But you lose to Northern Illinois out of all teams, and then you don't really have a great win outside of maybe A&M. But if A&M loses to Texas, that's a 4-loss A&M team. You can see the ACC sitting pretty. So, yeah, the ACC is gunning for 2 teams in. Miami at number 6 and SMU at number 9 are now firmly in the field. Should they be able to survive an ACC championship game loss, which we would expect them to. Number 12, Clemson exploded up the charts and is suddenly the first team out of the field. If Clemson beats South Carolina, they will almost certainly move up. Listen, imagine, no way the ACC gets 3 teams in with Clemson. I just can't. Clemson, listen, them beating South Carolina, that's a good win, but Clemson's at home for that game, and that would be Clemson's best win, and they already have a horrible loss against Georgia by like 31 points. I know it was week 1. Clemson's an interesting idea. I mean, if they're, they move up significantly, but it's like they're another team that really doesn't have a great win, but I just can't see 3 ACC teams making it. The Big 12 is in trouble. Yeah, the Big 12 is, and this is the problem we're talking about with the Big 12. See, you can see Boise State now moving up to getting that final bye over the Big 12 champ, which would be Arizona State. The Big 12 has just been a very bad conference this year. We knew it was going to be pretty average, but there's just not a single team that has separated themselves at all, and they're just all cannibalizing each other. You can see while the ACC's 2-loss team, Clemson, got plenty of credit, the Big 12's did not. In fact, 9-2 Big 12 teams, Iowa State and BYU, both sit behind the American favorite Tulane. Wow. Heading into the final stretch of the season. So you know what? Tulane is very good analytically. It doesn't shock me. Number 16 Arizona State is the highest in the field. Even if they win the Big 12 championship, the league seems unlikely to catch Boise State for the first round bye, and that is a catastrophic issue. But look at this. However, that's not the least of the conference's worries. In fact, if Tulane wins out, the Green Wave will have a serious case in jumping ahead of the Big 12 champion. If that happens, the Big 12 could get left out of the field completely. So I wonder what that scenario would be. Is that even possible? Because I feel like the problem with Tulane is they have 2 losses and they're in the American. Now, Tulane analytically could be better than the Big 12 champion, but the problem is if the Big 12 champion has 2 losses, the Big 12 champion is going to get another quality win during their championship game. Could you imagine that? My goodness. Committee's love of Penn State is baffling. This just seems biased. I mean, listen, I understand Penn State. They don't have the best. See, if they talk about that Minnesota game, oh, they didn't even talk about it. Yeah, they did talk about it. See, they're calling Minnesota a middling squad. That's a tough road game going on the road in cold weather like that. This is disrespect against the Big Ten. It's not warranted. It's not necessary. And I mean, Penn State, you might move them down a few spots, but why is Penn State lower than Notre Dame? Notre Dame has a much worse loss than Penn State does, and Notre Dame has a worse strength of schedule. So are we not going to? But see, this is not good. But you've got that, and then you also do have the resume. We'll take a look at these resumes here, and you can see this is the gold standard. It's strength of record. It's always been the gold standard. You do have Oregon at number 1. You've got Georgia because of their schedule. They do have look at their schedule at number 1 in the country. I mean, Oregon has a really weak strength of schedule, but they have that win over Ohio State and they're undefeated, so it's going to prop them up. That doesn't really matter. I mean, obviously, if they lose the Big Ten championship, they're going to be knocked down. It just depends on that. Ohio State at number 3 in terms of strength of record, strength of schedule at 25. Penn State at number 4. Penn State is liked in terms of the strength of record. They're at number 32 in terms of strength of schedule. Texas. Now, see, this is kind of where the strength of schedule is. I mean, like, let's look at Texas for a second. Like, where's Texas's win? I don't see it. I mean, I guess Oklahoma would be their good win. Maybe Florida. What a weak schedule that is, man. Yeah, I guess Oklahoma or Florida would be their good. Vanderbilt on the road, maybe, but they barely even won that game. I mean, Texas, we'll see. I mean, you would expect them to be in if they lose to A&M though. I mean, they do have a much better strength of schedule than Miami. Like, who is Miami even? What's Miami's best win at? Florida? At Louisville is probably their best win, honestly. Man, what a weak schedule that is, too. Have they played a single ranked team? I guess Louisville was ranked when they played them. I mean, some of these teams in Power 4, their schedules are remarkable. So Miami at number 6. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with Miami. Indiana, obviously, their schedule is not very good, but by facing Ohio State on the road, it props them up a little bit. But now they face Purdue, it's going to lower their schedule even. But I think Indiana for sure is going to get in, unless they somehow lose to Purdue. Tennessee, I think, is going to get in at this point, unless they lose to Vanderbilt, which honestly, it's not likely, but it's possible. You do have SMU. SMU, who do they face again? California. California's not terrible, but they'll probably win that game. So I guess the idea for the ACC would be, I mean, and then also Clemson, but Clemson's down at number 18. I guess the question is, how much does Clemson move up in terms of strength of record if they beat South Carolina? Obviously, they would move in front of South Carolina, we would expect. They would probably jump all of these teams. They'd probably jump BYU. They could jump Boise State. Arizona State is the top big, no. BYU actually, in terms of strength of record, is the top Big 12 team. Where's Tulane? Is Tulane not even on here? Yeah, Tulane's all the way down at number 28. But Tulane has two decent games coming up. I mean, look at all these blowout wins. Tulane faces Memphis. That's a solid team. And then they face Army. As long as Army beats Navy, that'll be a solid win for them as well. Yeah, but I don't see that happening. I think if Tulane wanted to make the playoff over a Big 12 champion, even with how bad the Big 12 is, they needed to beat one of these teams. Kansas State at home, which they could have won that game. At Oklahoma, they needed one of those wins, and they didn't get it. And even some of these games are a little bit too close to comfort. Like a North Texas, you allow 37 points. That's tough. So, I mean, I guess there's an outside chance for Tulane. I think the Tulane's real shot is probably Boise State losing and getting in as the group of 5 team would be my guess, looking at them. South Carolina, I mean, South Carolina certainly is going to have a shot being at number 14, having that road game at Clemson, especially considering how valued Clemson is according to the committee at number 12. Yeah, South Carolina, even with 3 losses, I mean, if you're South Carolina, you would love A&M to beat Texas. You would love it because you won that game very easily. You would love, I mean, that's a terrible loss to Ole Miss at home. It really is a bad loss. The loss to LSU was also not good either. I mean, even South Carolina, they don't even have that good of a win, honestly. What's with all these SEC fans propping up South Carolina? I finally look at their schedule, and I'm not impressed at all. Where's their good win? A&M, really? Imagine A&M loses to Texas. That's a 4-loss team. Their best win is beating them at home. Missouri's their best win. They won by 4. I don't know, man. Even South Carolina really doesn't have that good of a win, honestly, looking at that. And people have been clamoring them to be the 3-loss team to make it. Alabama, people have been saying they're sick of them. I mean, Bama does have that win over Georgia. Wisconsin's not horrible, but it's really not going to help. LSU, yeah, I mean, the win over Georgia is going to help Alabama. Like, I feel like Alabama has a better resume than South Carolina. And they also Bama beat South Carolina by 2 points at home. It was close, but I would take Bama over South Carolina based on resume, head-to-head as well. Also, strength of record is better. Strength of schedule is better. I don't know how South Carolina has the 12th best schedule looking at that. But either way, guys, that is just the current situation. Let's look at game control. Ole Miss is number 1 in game control. That's because they beat up on a bunch of teams and it helped them. I mean, yeah, you beat Georgia by 18. You're going to be really good in terms of game control. Ohio State, Texas, Oregon. Bama is 5 in game control. That's going to help them. I mean, I don't know if Bama's going to make it. I just, like, you look at the SEC right now. Let's look at strength of record. Georgia, Texas, Tennessee. Those teams will make it. And then, I mean, we'll see what happens with A&M against Texas. They're a 2-loss team, technically, A&M is. It might be Bama as a 3-loss team as a number. I mean, it just depends. It depends. Like, let's say Clemson beats South Carolina. Does Clemson make it now over Alabama because Clemson's a 2-loss team? But does Clemson really have the key wins to be elevated over Bama? I mean, Bama has that horrible loss to Oklahoma, though. And they've got a loss to Vanderbilt. The Tennessee loss is not bad. It's on the road. I mean, you've got the great win over Georgia. But you've got to win over South Carolina. But if South Carolina loses to Clemson, that win over South Carolina becomes less good. So I don't know. There's a lot at play here, guys. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.